One of the eternal laws is that both of these energies exist, feminine and masculine, and both of them are needed in partnership with each other for the purpose of creation.
Welcome to In Her Image, a podcast where we seek and celebrate our Mother God through scripture, scholarship, and everyday life. I'm your host, Meg Rittmanic, and today I have a soul sister, Meghan Farner, with me. Meghan Farner is another podcast host. She does a podcast called Hidden Wisdom and is just an incredible human with so much amazing insight to the divine feminine and a true passion to sharing the message of Heavenly Mother with others. And I'm just so grateful to be in this path with a dear friend and with an incredible human. And I invited her to come on and talk about the embodiment of the divine feminine and how we can do that within our lives, and also how we see that pattern in scripture as well. And so, Meghan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I think it's kind of funny that we have similar names, Meg,
Yes.
Meghan.
We're a vibe for sure.
We are a vibe. It's funny, you know, I think there's a lot of Megs in this, in this area of work. And I'm sure you know that the name Meghan means pearl.
Yeah.
And the pearl of great price.
Yes.
Is the divine feminine, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just an interesting thing that I think our names tie us to this work a little bit in some way.
I love that you point that out. I never connected that until actually pretty recently. I knew my name meant pearl, and I knew that pearls were a divine feminine symbol, but it was only until recently that I put the two together and I was like, oh yeah, duh, obviously. And anyway, yeah,
it's
agree.
Our name became our calling, right?
Yeah. Or maybe vice versa. Maybe our calling was our name and our mothers perceived that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting thing. Well, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today about embodiment, because I think it's something that a lot of women, I'm going to take your words out of your mouth as we were having a conversation right before this, of how a lot of women logically understand the divine feminine, or understand the scholarship of the divine feminine and that concept, but maybe don't embody it. And I know you've done a lot of work and you're working towards helping other people learn how to embody the divine feminine. So let's jump in. Let's talk about this. What does it mean to be embodied, and especially with the divine feminine?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I do think that this is so important because we live in a culture that is so intellectually driven, right? We're so focused on the logic side of our being, which is not bad, right? That is a more masculine form, and it's important for our lives. But the beauty, I think, and the depth of the divine feminine is that she is experiential, right? The divine feminine is not just something to be known intellectually. She wants to be experienced. She is to be lived, right? And there's something about being a woman that is just a very special invitation to embody her on a soul and on a cellular level all the way through. And we can talk about that a little bit. But first off, I think maybe one thing that comes to mind that I think is important to maybe see this perspective is that first and foremost, the divine feminine is inclusive of and also expansive beyond and through just the personage of our Heavenly Mother. So sometimes I think when we hear divine feminine, we just think Heavenly Mother and her personality, and she is in and through everything, right? So I don't mean this to sound limiting of her in any way. I just mean it to say that when I speak of the divine feminine and when I've experienced the divine feminine, it's her and it's everything else. There's so much more, even just beyond having a relationship with Heavenly Mother as a personality.
When you say that, are you talking specifically about how she is inclusive, or how we in our bodies are inclusive of not only the feminine, but also the masculine?
Yeah,
that's a really beautiful.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to say that, right? I want to expand our minds to see that the divine feminine is a personality. She is personalities, right? If we think about the different divine feminine archetypes, but she's also at least half of creation, all creation. And I want to say sometimes I even lean towards her being even more than that for exactly the reason that you just said, right? That the feminine is capable of birthing both more feminine and also the masculine. So there's a capacity in the divine feminine that is totally inclusive, that is so pervasive, and that is so prevalent across literally all creation. Maybe we can take a step back and define just some cosmology a little bit too, that maybe will be helpful for this. So in our tradition, LDS tradition, we kind of see Heavenly Father and Mother as like the penultimate, right? Like they are the top, they are the creators, they are the first of all that is and was. And I want to reframe that just a little bit and suggest that there is a pre-extant source that birthed them, right? That their individuality, their personalities was actually predated by what we could call the light of Christ or spirit or truth. We read this in the scriptures in Doctrine and Covenants 84 and also in 88 and 90, 91, 93. We find a really beautiful scripture chain that talks about that spirit, truth, word, light, Christ, God, law, love, intelligence. These are actually all the same thing. And it's being described by this word. And I think another way that you can think of this is that this is the primordial waters, the dark womb of creation. And it pre-exists even our intelligences, even our heavenly parents, right? And the nature of that space is very feminine to me, right? So I'm just going to kind of leave that there, but I want to say that that is the feminine that I want us to tap into energetically and see like it is so much more expansive than even just our Heavenly Mother or even just ourself as divine women, right? Like feminine spirit is in and through absolutely everything. It is the fabric of eternity. And so when we're talking about the feminine, I hope that we can start to have conversations that are more reflective of that expansive, pervasive, creative, overflowing power that exists and recognize that our invitation when we're in this dimension right now, when we are embodied in matter, which is also divinely feminine, right? Matter, mother, these words are linked to each other. There's something about being a woman right now that is inviting us to somehow encapsulate that eternal spirit and energy and bring it into embodied form in ourselves. At least that's an invitation that I have felt.
Wow. That was really beautiful. It was like very expansive to think of it that way, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
so much beyond like the text or like this very limited like telescope type of perspective. It's like instead of zooming in on one part of it, looking at the big picture. I love
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah. And we can do that, and then we can also bring it back into like our microcosm of truth, right? Like this is the beautiful thing about truth is that it works on all these levels. But I think it's important to frame it as like we need to be seeing the feminine as so much bigger than even just our relationship with our Heavenly Mother. That is a part of it, that is encapsulated in it, right? And that is vital to understanding this. But there's more. And that's the invitation, right? Is that there is always more. So maybe we can bring this down a little bit from this like vast, eternal, cosmic view and bring that into you and me, right? And like our lives as women who have a very particular theological background, right? We have an understanding of Heavenly Mother that is at least intellectual. And what does it look like to bring that into more practical, right? Like into our everyday life that is done with an intention and a purpose that is beyond even just the recognition that, well, I have a female body, so aren't I just feminine in that way, right? Like, how can we bring about the creative force that we are connected to, that is in and through all things? So obviously, like there's so many ways we could go on this and so many different perspectives. And I know that you've had amazing conversations on your show that I think all fit in this conversation. But there are like a couple of places that I'd like to talk about to kind of, I don't know, help us conceptualize what this looks like on an individual basis. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Let's do it. I'm excited.
Okay, cool. So, first off, I wonder if it would be helpful, and I'll let you guide this because you know your audience better, but would it be helpful to kind of define the characteristics of feminine and masculine spirit? Or do you feel like that's something that's kind of known?
I think that that would be helpful. I think some people may have a concept of what that is and how that functions within themselves,
Hmm.
but I think it's always a good thing to talk about.
Okay, so I guess I'll put a gentle plug as well. If anyone is interested, this is my book, Consider Yourself as Eve. We've talked about it on the show before, so I won't spend too much time on it. But I think this is really important for us to realize. So, there are, as a part of kind of this cosmic, primordial, creative potential that exists, that is in and through everything, that is the spirit, that is truth, that is light, there are eternal laws that are tied to how all of this operates. And some of those things we read about in the scriptures, right? We read about the law of the harvest. What you sow, that is what you will reap, right? That is an eternal law. Spirit operates by that law. It's going to work every single time. There are two laws that are relevant to this conversation. Those are the laws of gender and polarity. And I'm going to suspend kind of I don't want to like be emotional or political in this. I think that we can all agree that all of us have masculine and feminine energy, right? And so I'm not going to talk about it in terms of like physical gender, but I'm going to say that one of the eternal laws is that both of these energies exist, feminine and masculine, and both of them are needed in partnership with each other for the purpose of creation. Not just creation the way we might think of it as like procreation, but literally the creation of all spiritual things that precede physical creation, right? We need both these elements of masculine and feminine.
Something I was going to say is even with like your title of your book, Consider Yourself as Eve, we can also consider ourselves as Adam.
Mm-hmm.
There is this juxtaposition within ourselves that we can live into both dynamics, and we are meant to bring balance between those two dynamics within ourselves as well,
Yep. Yep.
understanding them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So true. And this is part of embodying the feminine is actually learning how to hold space and have a healthy masculine as well. I will say that for me personally, I do believe that I embodied as a woman for a reason, right? And so I believe that is an invitation for me, particularly to understand the feminine, because again, she is meant to be experiential. So there's something about having a feminine body that makes the experience of the feminine expanded. But these are both relevant to men and women across the board, is understanding this dichotomy and the partnership between both of these things. So we'll go through and we'll kind of go line by line some characteristics. This is not a conclusive list. But because this has to do with an eternal law of gender, masculine and feminine energy, and polarity, I love to look. You can find masculine and feminine literally everywhere. And it's really helpful to me because it's kind of like the lowest common denominator. If I can see a masculine feminine dichotomy, then I know that the thing I'm looking at, I can contextualize it in creation. I can see its purpose, right? So, for example, I was listening to a talk show host the other day. This was like a political show. I haven't listened to them in a while. But I was listening to him, and at one point I decided, okay, I see where you're at, and I'm just going to turn this off now. Because he was kind of harping on this idea of taking action, right? Like we need to be acting all the time. We need to, like, I want my individual will and my individuation and my autonomy. And I'm not really interested in some of these more like communal sorts of things. And what that taught me is, okay, so you are looking at this strictly from a masculine perspective. The masculine is about self, the masculine is oriented towards taking action, right? The feminine is more about relationship and about our connection to each other. The feminine has the wisdom to learn when it's okay to rest and when it's okay to be righteously acted upon. Because of some of our scriptural interpretations, we sometimes get the message like, oh yeah, I just need to act all the time too. But there is a way to be acted upon by righteous forces, by angels, by even Christ. Receiving grace is a form of being acted upon, right?
Yeah. It's this like the receiving, the rest is, I'm going to say this word wrong. I'm not even going to try to say it, but I feel like that's also displayed in kind of this story of David in the
Mm,
Talmud, where his harp is actually played by the wind, which is another name
yes.
for the spirit of God, or
Mhm.
which is feminine in nature in the ancient Hebrew. And that's, I think, the kind of receiving that we're talking about that is feminine and righteous. It's like when you're willing to receive guidance from the spirit or receive feedback about
Mhm.
something that you're struggling with. Maybe it's from an actual person, and make changes according to that inspiration that you receive.
Right. It's about discernment and wisdom, right? It is also totally possible to be acted upon unrighteously, right? And that kind of happens when we don't have a healthy masculine side that is setting boundaries.
Yeah,
Right. So the thing about the feminine is it's more nuanced, right? It's not as easy like the masculine side you can kind of say, "Oh, this is a light expression, this is a shadow expression. This is a good way, this is a bad way." And the feminine, it's a thousand colors that our eyes are not trained to see, right? And so it
right.
takes a little bit more attunement. But anyway, thank you so much for that example. And again, I love to see these things in action and I contextualize them using this masculine and feminine energy or language because then I can see, okay, this is a piece of creation. Is it appropriately contextualized? Is it appropriately balanced between both sides? Is the polarity correctly working? Or is that just one piece and I don't have to throw it away just because it's not complete, but I understand where you're coming from. And there's so much grace and forgiveness and healing that comes from having that perspective. Maybe we can talk about how this applies in view of the church as well. Maybe we can
Yeah,
talk about that later. So, some characteristics of feminine spirit. The feminine is dark. She's hidden. She's veiled. This was something that we were talking about before, but the symbol of a veil is actually highly significant in relation to the feminine. I know that there's a wide range of like reactions and feelings to back in 2019, I think, when the veil was removed from women in the temple. And I can see all sides of it. And so I respect whatever your opinion is on that. But I want to add just a little bit of historical context, right? So historically, many, many goddesses were veiled. Some of them were veiled by several layers of a veil. And that had nothing to do with some of the more like modern connotations that maybe we've received that feels very misogynist. Like that feels like you're not allowed to be seen, you're not allowed to have a voice. And those expressions do exist in cultures that we know of, right? But anciently, the veil was a symbol of deep respect and of intense power. The veil was a protection for those who were not prepared for what lied behind the veil.
right.
And we can see that even in the account of Moses, right? He goes up the mountain, he is filled with the glory of God. That word glory is deeply feminine in nature as well when we're reading that. And he comes down literally effervescent because of his encounter with God. And what does he do? He veils himself, not because he's less than, but because he is embodying godliness that the other people are not ready for, right?
Right.
So, this is teaching us something about the divine feminine, Heavenly Mother, ourselves, that aspect of creation that holds all other creation, right?
Yeah. I want to say some things about the veil
Yes,
too, because
please do.
it's something that I'm passionate about and learning more and more every day. In fact, yesterday I just had a conversation with Donna Nilsson, who's a mutual friend, and
Yes.
she was telling me about this ancient text that talks about the dances of the seven
Mm-hmm.
veils. And it's a dance that women would do where they would have seven veils. And it was symbolic of setting a
Mm-hmm.
boundary with the world, with a partner, of like inviting them closer and closer into understanding and knowing you, like layers
Mm-hmm.
of yourself and
Mm-hmm.
layers of intimacy, but also like a way to set a boundary of protection. And something Donna said is, even though everyone on the outside cannot see in past the veil, the woman can always see out through the veil.
Mm-hmm.
So really, she is the one that's standing in the authoritative position because she can see everything,
Mm-hmm.
even though not everyone can see her.
Right. And it was her choice too. was the one that was donning the veil by her choice. It wasn't
Right.
something that was being forced upon her.
It's funny because my sister just got married over the summer, and um, I gave a speech at her wedding, and I talked about the veil and what it represents. And I had her put on her veil because she had not
Mm-hmm.
worn it during her wedding. And I talked about this deep symbolism of how what is hidden behind the veil is divine. And when you put that veil on, it says you are owning who you are. You are owning your own divine nature as a daughter of a goddess,
Mm-hmm.
and your own divine potential to become like her.
Yeah.
And when a
Abs-
man lifts that veil, he needs to understand what he is stepping into this relationship with something that is divine. And he
right.
better treat it that way, you know?
Right. Well, and it should only be done with her permission.
Right.
Right? Like there are some things that would suggest that maybe we see efforts of the man to lift the veil when it's not actually permitted, right? And there's spiritual consequences for doing that, of trying to encounter the divine feminine when you're not prepared. Like there are real consequences that come with that, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
The veil is also deeply connected to embodiment, which is what we're talking about, right? Like, how do we actually bring this massive creative force into our physical body? So, yeah, hopefully, other people, like, if you're interested, you can find a chart. You can look up kind of what are the characteristics of feminine and masculine spirit if you need sort of that orientation. There's a lot of different symbols that the veil has, but I think that for today, maybe we can talk about the veil in the tabernacle. So, the veil in the tabernacle was several feet thick, or several inches at least, but I want to say it was even several feet thick. Like it was not just flimsy, what we have today, right? Like it was very dense. There were actually two veils. This is so fortuitous because I was just talking to Donna about this as well. So there was actually two veils, and you had to pass through one veil, and then there was a space, and then you were able to pass through the other. And this is actually deeply connected to some feminine sexual anatomy, where we literally have multiple veils that need to be passed through in order to come into that creative space. So that's a little bit interesting to talk about. When we see that, we can understand that one connotation of the veil has to do with the body, and including our physical body and also our full soul body. And this is something that God has been teaching me about lately that I'm like so excited about, is the idea of spiritual anatomy. And even in the anatomy of our soul, there are multiple veils, and we're kind of traversing these different levels of our body all the time. And there are some things sort of built into our bodies that serve as veils, both as protections, as orientations, and as things that eventually the goal is to have all the veils be parted, right? And that doesn't mean, I don't think that means ripped to shreds and taken out of the way, right? But it means that they are contextualized. They are understood what their purpose is and what it isn't. And when I am prepared to pass through these certain veils, then I am able to do so.
I think
Mm-hmm.
it's fascinating that even in the Old Testament, it's hinted towards this creation of the spiritual weaving of our spiritual bodies and also the weaving of our physical bodies. We see David talking about his soul being curiously wrought, which is the English translation for recomti, which actually means to be embroidered or woven together. Um, and he talks about it being done in the deepest, darkest parts of the earth, or like the womb of the mother, is basically what it's referring to there. And it's beautiful. And then, we fast forward to right before Christ is born, and Mary is one of the priestesses in the temple, and she's asked to weave the veil of the temple. Just so happens that she is also weaving the spirit and body of Christ in
Mm-hmm.
her womb at that same time. And so this concept of weaving is such a beautiful feminine concept that isn't untangible. It's actually a practice that we can embody.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that we can experiment with in our physical form and understand deeper levels of its spiritual meaning as we engage in that art form.
Mm-hmm. So true. Yes, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, this is a great way to tie this together, right? So, what is embodiment, right? Like how are we defining it in this way? And I would say again, we are trying to become a vessel, a pure vessel, so that we can bring that creative life force energy that pervades everything, that is connected to the highest essence of who we are and who God is. And we're trying to bring that into this physical reality. And in that way, our physical body serves almost like a portal. And there are veils and there are levels and there are things that get in our way, right? But there are things that we can do to part the veils, to release the things that are making us not a pure vessel. Or, and I don't mean that in like worthiness language, but I just mean our ego. I mean our ego. That's really what I mean.
Yeah.
Our ego is one of the biggest detriments, I think, to this process of embodying true godliness.
Yeah.
But there are
It's,
physical things we can do with our body that initiate this process of parting veils, so that we can just have that pure spirit flow into us.
yeah. Maybe let's talk about breath work and how
Mm,
that specifically is one practice that could do that. And then I would love to kind of talk about the breath and the connection to that in the Old Testament as well.
for sure. Yeah, breath, as you kind of pointed out, right? The root of that word that has to do with wind. It has to it relates to the spirit. If anyone has listened to the ancient tradition, she talks about the primordial waters that we talked about, this womb space that predates even the creation of God. And she also talks about the brooding wind. It's this image of the spirit moving upon these waters, that we have these two creative forces that are interacting with each other. And so in that way, our breath, it can be seen as a direct connection to the spirit, to this divine feminine force that is in and through everything. And I know, and probably a lot of people have heard, you can understand the importance and the vitality of something on a spiritual level by evaluating how long would you last physically without that thing, right? And we know you can last what, a couple of minutes. People who practice can last 10 minutes tops. Maybe someone who's really, really good and has practiced for a long time can go a little bit longer than that. You can last days without water. You can last weeks without food. You can last indefinitely, not very well probably, but you can last a while without sleep. But if you stop breathing, it's done, right? So there's something about that, I think, that speaks to the vitality and the importance of breath, not only to our physical body, but because it is teaching us about our spirit connection. It's something that ever needs to be flowing, it's recycling, it's literally tethering us to this grand creative force. I love breath work. I love particularly holotropic breath work, if anyone has done that. It's the most intense, as far as I know, kind of breath work that you can do. But it is guaranteed to induce a spiritual experience where you are parting veils and you are encountering God. I've had the opportunity to host and to administer breathwork sessions of this kind to groups of women, even large groups of women. We did it at our Embodying Eve retreat last year with 100 women. And a lot of these women had varying experiences. They had done it before, they hadn't done it before. All of them walked away saying that that was the most life-changing experience of their life. And when you engage in this practice with intention, it is deeply healing for you, first off, on a emotional, mental, physical. I've seen physical healing through this as well as spiritual healing. And it's also a beautifully enlightening experience, an opportunity for you literally to encounter God and to receive instruction from God. So
Yeah.
tell me what you know, Meg. I know you know a lot about the breath too.
Yeah. I was just going to say, let's like even just take a moment right now as you're sitting and listening to this and just notice the change that happens from taking a good deep breath in through your nose and just holding that air inside of you for a little while and then releasing it. Like, do you notice that your muscles loosen? Do you notice that maybe if you had like any feelings in your like stomach of tightness, that it kind of releases? The science of breath is so fascinating. I just read a book about the science of breath, and Wow, it's amazing. It's completely connected to your nervous system and also to your health, your ability to thrive. And even taking a breath in through the nose can protect you from sickness. And I think it's fascinating that when we hear about Adam and Eve taking in their breath of life, it is in through the nostril. It specifically references that. And then you come to, our modern culture where science is showing that there is an actual connection to health and breathing through your nose. It's fascinating to me. But even like that breath of life, that concept in the Hebrew is so incredibly powerful and beautiful. And it's connected to the name of Eve. So the name for the breath of life is the same name that Eve got of Shava. And so with that connection, we see that there is a feminine connection to that breath of life, that the air we breathe and how it circulates through us is connected to her, to the divine feminine. And even as we exhale, the trees, which also are a symbol of Heavenly Mother, recycle our breath and provide us with refreshing, good, appropriately chemically dynamic for our body to be able to use. And isn't that just so fascinating, right? It just is the most fascinating thing how all these things are woven together. And I feel like that's kind of like this head understanding. But to breathe is that embodiment understanding of the
Right.
same thing.
Right. Using your physical body as an instrument to conduct and convey spirit. That's really what it is, right? And it is that spirit that is that divine feminine creative force. That degree that predates all other creation. Like that is what we are bringing into ourselves when we are inviting the breath in with intention, right? And yes, it has all of these enlivening effects. Love
Yeah.
it.
Well, and it's fascinating to me that it requires breath to be able to create sound waves and
Hmm.
frequency, which is also something so connected to the divine feminine. We find in the Bible over and over again that women gather together and sing to usher in birth, to usher in change, to declare, to celebrate transitions and all kinds of things. And then even we fast forward to modern day um, Revelation, where Eve, the elect lady, is given a command to collect all the songs for the church to sing, and that
Emma.
those,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have said Emma.
I think everyone knew what you were talking about, but
Yeah. To sing, and that those will raise up to God as a prayer, and they will become
hmm
a blessing
hmm
for those people.
Yeah,
And so it is a priestess power to sing and to use our own breath
right.
to embody that in a way as well, in a
hmm
spiritual and feminine nature.
Totally. Yeah, sound is interesting, right? Sound waves, they work a little bit different than light waves. Light is fascinating because it's actually a really great integration of masculine and feminine, which I think all the best things are. Like you can see, like if something is godly, it's got the balance of both of those things. And light is both a particle, which is more of a masculine expression, and a wave, which is feminine, right? And so there's a reason that this same spirit, this truth, these primordial waters, you can also describe it as light, right? There's a beautiful balance that's being born out of this cosmic womb. But sound is a little bit different. Sound isn't perceived visually, right? Like it's only perceived audioly, which just the actual expression of it can be seen as masculine, but it travels more veiled, right? And so you see again the beautiful balance there. But so many ancient cosmologies agree that creation came into being because it was spoken, right? Because it was vocalized, it was sound and vibration. Those were the things that were orchestrating the actual movement of matter and the connection between spirit and matter that came through sound. And so, yeah, and we even see like there's some really fascinating things in ancient history that suggest that there were ancient cultures that also understood the power of sound and were able to use it to move large physical objects, right? Like that was an ancient wisdom that they had. So, yeah, all of these things deeply connected. The throat chakra being such a vitally important aspect of our spiritual anatomy. And also so interesting that so many women, we have a lot of healing to do on this center of us, right? That our voices are a precious and powerful gift that has been commoditized and silenced and corrupted in a lot of ways throughout history. And so reclaiming that power of our voice, doing the healing work, the internal work to overcome those veils of our natural self, things that we think are true about us that are not true, right? I need to be silent. It's not safe for me to speak. And also reclaiming the things about us that are authentically innate to our divine self, to our divinity, that maybe we have cast off from ourselves. I would say that that's the definition of shadow work.
Yeah.
Is recognizing these things are innately true about me, but I have isolated myself from them. And I think so many women can say that about singing or vocalizing or speaking up or writing or whatever it is, your creative expression that's tied into this aspect of yourself. So many of us put that in a corner and say, I can't be that and be safe. And while historically there's precedence for that, I believe that this is central to what we're doing right now in restoring the divine feminine. She is only going to be restored through embodiment. And our bodies, our female bodies, they are built for this specifically. Our nervous systems, exactly as you were saying. Like there is something unique about our invitation and our opportunity to bring her reality and this creative force into the physical world right now. And so we are invited to do all the work that we need to do to remove these blockages and to reclaim those pieces of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That hits home. I know that has been one of like my, honestly, like one of my wounds
Yeah.
that I am still even in the process, like even though I'm on a podcast and I am writing and I'm doing all these things, like working through is
Mm-hmm.
that. And it was really fascinating for me to understand that the name of Eve in Hebrew is Shava, which it has a secondary root, which means to declare. It's not
So
just
good.
life, but to declare, which is so similar to Christ saying that he is the word.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fascinating, the connection there.
Yeah, and word is another one of those words for that pre-extant spiritual material, spirit, light, truth, word. So yeah, these are all deeply connected to the feminine and to Christ, right? Like his very balanced masculine and feminine right there, right? But a mission that in a lot of ways can be characterized as deeply feminine, that he was coming out of love, that he was coming to reestablish connection and relationship between us and God when we had forgotten what our relationship was to God, that we are a piece of God. He came here to restore that, right? And so he is declaring, and I believe right now it's our invitation to also take up that mantle and to declare the truth, to embody, to bring into our physical body and to share through our divinely inspired action what is the truth of the feminine, that she is not just our Heavenly Mother, but that we are, that all of our souls. An interesting thing to note too is that in the ancient traditions, the soul was always described as with feminine pronouns, whether you are a man or a woman. And I think that that, again, is testifying of something. That's saying something about our innate divinity, about our true identity, about our relationship to God and to the cosmos, about our creative potential and our worth. Like that is declaring something about all of humanity that I think is worth stopping and thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so beautiful. I really love how this conversation is progressing.
Oh, good.
If our audience doesn't know, we are literally winging it right now. We did not even come up with a outline.
We
I
had
just
some ideas.
we
Like,
had some ideas.
we're we're just letting the spirit go. We are embodying the spirit right now. We're just
Yes,
letting it flow, right?
exactly.
And so if it seems choppy, sorry, but no, I
No,
love this.
I love this too. Well, I think maybe we talk about some other ways that embodiment happens.
Yeah, I think that this is maybe where some people get uncomfortable with the idea of embodying the feminine because she is a lot more nuanced. She's a lot more metaphysical. She's outside of the box. She can feel a little bit ungrounded, right? And so, a lot of the places that I have found really beautiful embodiment practices are going to be more Eastern traditions, places that are honoring polarity, that are aware of the masculine and feminine, that are aware of the connection between body and spirit, and that are leaning into that, right? So there's a reason that a lot of women are drawn to practices like yoga, meditation, which is so, so vital. Like, I cannot speak enough that, like, if you want to be aligned and a part of this restoration of the divine feminine and this embodiment, meditation is an absolute must, in my opinion. Things like dance, like really intentional dance. I know that we talked a little bit about drumming, and that has some really beautiful connections to, again, vibration and sound, and also healing capacity. That vibration is healing.
It's fascinating. We find record of Miriam with a frame drum as an act of her authority as a priestess and prophetess in Israel. She helped lead the people out of Egypt and through the opening of the Red Sea with this frame drum. It is part of who she is and what she does. And even it's fascinating because if we look to the name of Asherah, which is got a few different roots to it of happiness and joy connected to the tree of life, and also a name of Heavenly Mother in the Uteric tradition, and even in ancient Israel, where we find inscriptions of Yahweh with his Asherah. But even with Asherah, it is spelt very similarly to the word to declare or to sing, I sing. So when we watch the movie Prince of Egypt, and at the end, Miriam comes out with her drum and she starts singing this song. And if you remember it, it says, Ashira, Ashira, Ashira. Well, that sounds very familiar, right? It sounds very much like Asherah to sing, and she's playing this drum. And then we find later in the Bible many times where women come out and they're greeting the king, specifically Saul and David, when they come back from battle. And they sing, Saul has killed his thousands and David has killed his tens of thousands. And in that moment, they are elevating David above Saul. They're basically decreeing that David is the new king through their song, and that is their right and their authority to do so. And obviously, Saul is enraged by this and then pursues David to want to kill David, and David has to flee into the wilderness, which another symbol of Heavenly Mother. It's just fascinating. But yeah, I mean, outside of Christianity and outside of Judaism, there is also the tradition of toning and also using instruments to align your frequencies and bring peace into your life. And I think that those are all rooted in the feminine. So
Totally agree. And yeah, it's so beautiful. And maybe a way that we can present these things that we're talking about is that these are forms of priestesshood ordinances, that these are being performed at highly significant moments in biblical accounts, and that they were used to mark very important communal experiences that were going on, right? Like the coronation of a king, which was always done by the queen. The queen was the one that was delegating power and authority to the king, choosing the king, right? So the women coming up and declaring him the king, that was their right. Another example that I thought of, I mentioned dance earlier. In the Book of Mormon, we have the daughters of the Lamanites who are going out in the woods and they're dancing, right? And in one way, we can look at that and be like, oh, they're just being girls, whatever. I danced with my friend. Maybe it was a slumber party. Like maybe we have some of those images in our head, right? And I would take it a step further and say, no, maybe they were performing an ordinance on behalf of the people. Another very feminine embodiment practice that I've come to love, that again maybe can feel uncomfortable or different from, it's certainly different than what we're raised with, is the idea of cyclical living and learning to respect the seasons and respect the times in the year when the veil is just naturally going to be thinner because we are aligning to our original celestial orbit. The earth is aligning to the original celestial orbit. And so this was something that the women would pay attention to, right? And that they would mark these days with celebrations and with feasts, or maybe with more practical things like cleaning out their home, or protecting physically, protecting spiritually the people in their home and their communities. These are things that feel very foreign to us now. Maybe they sound kind of witchy or dark in some way or another, but this was an ancient practice that the women understood. They understood the metaphysical importance of these dates, and that was something that they honored appropriately in the ways that they could with their own special ordinances.
I think it's also important to say that not only did these women practice this, but Christ also practiced those throughout
Yep.
his whole life. He celebrated all of the festivals of the seasons in the Hebrew calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So why shouldn't we?
And I would suggest maybe he did even more than just that, right? Like I believe that there are many accounts that I find credible in traditions showing that Christ traveled and that he was visiting other cultures. We have records of him visiting the British Isles and the Celtic region, and obviously Egypt, as well as some other areas in the East, even. And so I believe that he was just a sponge and soaking up all the truth from all of the different cultures that he encountered and learning how they all testify of God. Like, this is, I think, one of the most important things about this conversation is, again, when you can narrow things down to the lowest common denominator and see a masculine and feminine, then all of a sudden everything fits. Everything that is true, like this is how you can circumscribe truth into one great whole. And I think a lot of the times our reactions or perspectives, our innate natural selves, we like a good and a bad, right? Like we want to say, this is the way that it is, this is the way that it's not. And in reality, the beauty of the feminine and learning to embody her is that everything is true in its time and in its season and in its context. And you start to look for, what is the context of this thing for me to determine if this is appropriate or not, instead of, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And it alleviates so much fear. I think it gives us so much depth of perception for our discernment, right? And having a confidence to be able to step outside of the boxes where she lives, right? Where that spirit is so pervasive. God doesn't exist in boxes, right? Pieces can be found there, right? But if we want the fullness of divinity, we have to be willing to go into the wilderness, as you were saying, right? And this is such a helpful guide, as well as just Christ himself, and really coming to know him, not just know about him. I think sometimes like we know about him, or we think we do. Like I've read the stories. I know a little bit about his life. I know that he loves me. I know he died for me, like whatever, that's kind of what we know. And I would say that a deeply feminine practice would be determining not just to know about him, but to actually come to know him and to have a personal relationship with him where he and I talk every day, all the time. And I can hear his voice in my head directing me, and I respond to him. We have conversations, and he makes fun of me because I'm because I'm ridiculous sometimes, and he is actually a really funny guy with a really great personality, like developing that kind of relationship with him where we have confidence in him. Like he wants us to embody our divine femininity. He desperately wants that. He's not putting caps. He's not putting limits on us. He doesn't want to stop our voices. Like he so desperately wants us to reclaim all of the ancient wisdom and the ancient traditions that were so aligned to God and godliness. He is here to empower us. He wants us to do that. And he recognizes that that means maybe stepping into places that we haven't gone before. Maybe there is risk, right? Like there is risk when we step out into the wilderness. He recognizes that, especially when we need to go places that are very foreign from the tradition that we feel familiar to. We're going to go to the East. We're going to go into more spiritual circles, maybe. But he knows how to navigate us. He knows how to ground us. He knows how to help us contextualize everything so that we don't fall into the black or white, the right or wrong, as well as the dark places, right? Because it is possible to get too much light where all of a sudden I'm blind, right? Like he knows how to keep us so grounded and secure. And so I would say that the best embodiment practice is just embodying a relationship with Christ and seeing him not just as a distant savior, but as my intimate personal guide and mentor and friend. And I'm communing with him every day because I know that he wants this for us. Like, this is a part of his work. What we are doing here, what we are talking about today. Maybe it seems disconnected, but this is actually central to the restoration, to the new earth that we are trying to birth. It's going to be done by women standing up and claiming our right to birth and to bring life and everything that that means.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so beautiful. I love that invitation, Megan. I know we could just keep talking forever and ever, but that was just such a beautiful note that I feel like maybe we wrap it up there and let my listeners go to your podcast and to your content that you're creating to learn more about you. And I know you're making some amazing things, and I would love for you to kind of share about what you're doing right now.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited. Yes, please go check out the Hidden Wisdom podcast. We're having so many beautiful, deep, enriching, meaty conversations about God and about the mysteries, right? Because the mysteries of godliness, the esoteric dimension of religion, driving towards a personal, deep experience of God and godliness, that is all divinely feminine. And so we are having all sorts of those yummy conversations. But if you'd like to go deeper, we are developing an app right now, which I'm really excited about. It's going to host the podcast for one, but we're also going to be having pathway programs for wherever you are in your spiritual journey. This is something we talk about, is what is the progression of our spiritual evolution and transformation. So wherever you are, if you're just starting to ask questions, if you have been doing this for a while, if you feel like you're already in the depths of all of the things, we're going to have content for you, pathway programs there. We have our community so you can interact with other like-minded truth seekers that are understanding these things, wanting to embody them. We're going to have more and more events we're doing in that platform. And then also we have libraries, just chock full of all sorts of things that I think are so beautiful and important for our personal journey, libraries of meditations and workshops and articles and PDFs and guides and healing resources, because again, the healing aspect, that is so divinely feminine and important to go into ourself and to bring in the light of Christ to bind up our wounds, all sorts of resources for that. So the app is going to be available come spring, but we have a wait list already. So if this speaks to you, you can join the wait list. You'll get updates, sneak peeks, discounts, all that stuff. And then also I wanted to share that we're going to be doing another group mentorship program called Return to the Garden. So this is based sort of on my book, Consider Yourself as Eve, seeing Eve as an archetype for our own divine femininity. And we do kind of the lived work of some of the things that we were talking about here, of understanding the importance of our body, reconnecting to our body, reconnecting to our voice, understanding our relationship to the divine in this more expanded perspective, right? And so last time we had a group of 10 or 12 women, I want to say, and so many of them just were so sweet. They came back and they just said this was transformative. This was life-changing, that they felt reconnected to their bodies in ways that they hadn't before, that they felt reconnected to God, definitely more depth in their relationship with the divine. Most of the women in these spheres have some sort of LDS background, but are all in different places. And so no matter where you are with the church, we don't even talk about that. Like, we genuinely, we're just here for God. Like, we're just God girls. And so if that speaks to you, you can also find information for that mentorship program on my website, as well as all of our other programs. So I'll be sure to send that link.
So beautiful. Thank you, Megan, so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited for all the work you're doing, and I know it's going to be a blessing to so many people's lives. So thank you so much for being who you are and having the ambition you have. And man, you're just the right girl in the right place at the right time. It's perfect. So it's so great.
I love you. I'm so grateful for you. You're just glowing, and I appreciate all that you do. Thanks, Meg.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy this podcast, we invite you to come on over to patreon.com/inherimagepodcast for more content and community. We're so excited to meet you.